Hello everyone and welcome back Fáilte to the Éirevision podcast. We are very, very honoured today to be joined by former Taoiseach Deputy Leo Varadkar and Dr. Matthew Barrett, most importantly, two big Eurovision fans. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello
Thank
everyone.
you for having us. I apologise in advance that these aren't massive sweat patches on my arms. It's actually I just got soaked coming in here, so don't be disgusted.
Typical Irish weather.
Yeah,
out there,
don't be
isn't it?
disgusted yet.
Well, firstly, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast, and it's an exciting one because this is your first podcast together, I believe.
I think so.
We're finally taking the next step in any couple's relationship. It's the next
This is a
logical
safe
step.
space.
Yeah, we got the house together, and it's finally doing.
Now's
a
the time to talk
Joint
Eurovision.
account, all that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Haven't done a podcast together yet, though.
So we're going to kick it off, really. It's probably going to be a nice podcast for you guys because we're not going to talk politics. We're not going to talk anything too seriously. It's all about Eurovision, which we all share love for. Can you kick us off, really, and tell us your earliest memories of the song contest? Maybe, Matt, if you kick it off.
Sure. Yeah, I think my first memory, probably like first really strong defined memory, was me being incredibly competitive. In our family, we used to do sort of a Eurovision pool. So what happened was that we'd all put in like £5 or whatever it was back in the day, and we'd all guess a country, and whoever came highest would get the whole pot. So very, very kind of small stuff. But I remember in Eurovision 1994 when Rock and Roll Kids obviously won, well deserved and all that. But I had bet on Wir geben eine Party by Mikado, the German entry, and I thought they were shoo-ins to win. So
Great song.
revulsion at losing, which is kind of was a theme for the rest of my life, is kind of like my first kind of strong memory at Eurovision.
And you couldn't celebrate the Irish win?
Problem was my dad. My dad was the one who picked Ireland, so he won, and he sort of is a bit of a mood killer. He just kind of goes off, doesn't go buy a round for anyone, right? He just keeps to himself, puts them in the pocket, doesn't buy any treats for anyone. Just that was it. So yeah, I mean it was nice that we won 3 years in a row. A little bit much maybe, but yeah, Germans robbed that year.
Go we snatch a win nowadays and complain about 3 in a row.
I mean, my only kind of maybe takeaway is that one of my friends noticed recently that one of the members of Mikado wore a hat very similar to Donna McCall when she entered the Eurovision. So maybe they're inspiration for future Irish Eurovision entrants. Who knows?
To wait and see. What about yourself then?
So the Barrett family turned everything into competition. we don't do that. So I'm a child of the 80s, and back in the 80s we had in Dublin anyway, we had about 6 TV channels, and everyone did everything together as a family almost. So pretty much everyone would have watched the Eurovision in those days. Would have been a big event on TV and very much a kind of family event. And I remember looking forward to Eurovision coming up, really loving the voting. And loving all the different countries and the flags, and I'd be ready for the voting, having done out my tables already with the different countries and their flags. Just dying for the most interesting part, which is still the voting. Although it was more interesting back then.
I was going to say it's kind of a similar sense now with the Irish electoral system of waiting for the votes to come in.
But except I actually preferred when they did it the old way, and they'd start off with 1 point, whatever, 3 points, 4 points. The new thing, I think it just changes. It can change too quickly, particularly when the televote comes in.
You had the patience for it back when it was
The
each
one, the two,
one
the
by
three.
one.
Many fewer countries back then, of course.
Well,
'cause,
that's
That's the next thing.
It's
Yeah.
also
half of them were behind the Iron Curtain.
so much more complicated now to also figure out how many points are left to be distributed. So trying to work out kind of in advance what a country's particular chances of winning, so you can
Yeah.
kind of sort of project who's all swings can come out of nowhere.
I think the Swedes brought that in. It makes good telly when you don't really know what way the
Yeah.
points are going to go. We know that you've both attended contests. Off the top of your head, how many have you attended and which ones?
Yeah, so 3, it's same ones: Turin, Liverpool, and Malmö.
Yeah, the most recent 3. So we just never got around to doing it previously, and it's just I'll be honest, I had no idea how one even goes about getting to Eurovision. So I think I just said
That's the fan club.
but I think 1 year we just said let's just make a concerted effort to actually go, and sort of post COVID, and I think everybody's kind of thinking about what kind of things they want to do in their lives before the next pandemic comes and kills us all. So
What brings you joy?
We were actually going to go. We were going to go to Rotterdam, and was that 2020 the one that got cancelled?
2020,
Yes,
yeah.
So for anyone out there who believes conspiracy theories about me being into lockdowns and that type of stuff, among the many things it disrupted was my attempts to go to Eurovision.
Oh God! So what was your Liverpool was your first, Turin was your first
Turin,
Eurovision.
Liverpool, Malmö.
It was actually our first Eurovision ever
Yeah.
as well, and it was safe to say it was quite a different one to what you know,
I
compared
think-
to Liverpool and stuff. What were your thoughts on Turin?
Being an Irish person, all of my thoughts immediately went to the bar and how the bar setup was like. And I don't know if you guys noticed in Turin, they have this crazy ticketing system where you go into one queue to get a ticket to be able to go to another queue and then buy your drink. And there's loads of confusion with international fans who are sort of queuing up the wrong queue, getting to the front of the queue, being told to go to the other queue. It sort of made it a little bit messy. And it was Turin's a fabulous city. We had a little bit of a hair-raising escape from there because obviously there were no direct flights to Turin to Dublin at that stage. So we had arranged a flight from Turin to Frankfurt and a flight from Frankfurt to Dublin. But what actually happened on the morning, and we weren't able to check in online the night before, we just thought, it'd be grand, I'll be fine, figure it out in the day, and found out the next morning that the flight to Frankfurt had been cancelled.
Oh.
So we actually had to sort of race around the world, sort of the great amazing race style. We had to book a train from Turin to Milan, try and get a flight from Milan to meet our connection at Frankfurt, sprint all the way across the other side of Frankfurt Airport to the non-Schengen gates, and just about made our... Yeah, so it was a dramatic, very dramatic finale.
Kind of represent Turin though as a whole, because a lot of people thought that was a bit chaotic with the sun not working and everything. So kind of juxtaposition in a way for that.
I thought Liverpool was the one I enjoyed the most, though.
Yes.
Like they were all good in their own way, but I think partially the good weather and the fact it was in the city centre, not in the conference centre or an event centre out of town, and they had the kind of fan zone, so it was all very central. And fairness to BBC, when they do something well, they do it well.
Oh yeah.
We'll get to our own broadcaster a little bit later on. We know, obviously, you've chatted with Eurovision fans in the past as well, including ourselves on a few times, whether you remember it or not. The community is really, really warm, and obviously there's a huge LGBTQ plus side of things. What's your thoughts on that deep connection between Eurovision and the LGBTQ plus community?
I was actually trying to think when that started, or maybe I wasn't aware of it, but I it must have been there to a certain extent all the way through, but definitely in the last 10 or 15 years it's become much more of an LGBT phenomenon. Although what they often say to me, people who organise it is that, while the audience might be predominantly gay men, the people still watching at home are grandmothers and their 14-year-old girls. So it still has a very wide reach. I think maybe it was Dan International, maybe going back then. A very different Israel than the one we're dealing with today, as you can imagine, with transgender performer representing them and winning. But maybe it was before that. I'm not.
I kind of
sure
think
really.
about it sort of more of a general sort of voice of the oppressed, and everybody equal on an international stage. So when I think of sort of human rights in Eurovision, I think of sort of the first Bosnia-Herzegovina entry in 1993, where the performer actually had to escape the siege of Sarajevo with their band, and actually their conductor didn't manage to make it out of the city because it was locked down too tight. Sort of making his way across Europe and finally arriving at the end. The sort of the crackly voice from Sarajevo kind of phoning in with their results when the audience kind of cheered because an oppressed individual or an oppressed country were sort of there standing proud on an international stage. So it was the theme of oppression and underdogs and all that sort of carried through. I mean, think of Ukraine and their victory in 2022 and some of the amazing scenes. One of the most touching things for me from the sort of early stages of the war were the broadcasters in Ukraine trying to make sure that the Ukrainian music was being broadcast around the country despite their communications blackouts, etc. So I think more of a general sort of underdog oppression and Eurovision giving a voice and a stage to those people, I think kind of carries through. I also think that Serta Berner in 2003 with her pink belly dancing probably kick-started some of the LGBT specific stuff.
Yeah.
But I think though, even kind of pick up what Matt said there, even go back to Dana's original win for Ireland, and that was I think you say many things about Dana, but a strong supporter of LGBT rights she probably wouldn't be. But in Ireland in the 70s, we won nothing. It was a country that might have had great literature and so on, but would very, very rarely even be in an international competition. But then to win one was, I think, gave the country a bit of confidence. It was a little bit like a prelude to Euro, to Euro '88 and Italia '90 when, we were starting to get into tournaments and starting to win Olympic medals and things like that.
Yeah, something to be proud of, isn't it? Something to follow. You've mentioned a few good songs in there. If you were to compile a Eurovision playlist with must-have songs, say 5 songs each, what would be on there?
I'm going to go for a mix of kind of predictable and unpredictable. I think top of the list and probably my favourite Irish Eurovision entry, I'm going to get in ahead of Leo because he probably would say the same, would of course be Terminal 3 from 1994.
Banger! I love that one.
You know, when I lived in the US for a while, and you know, a lot of Americans are kind of catching on to Eurovision now. Back then they weren't so much, and it's trying to introduce this whole kind of world, and that was kind of the ones I kind of shoved in their faces frequently. I'll go as well for two songs from 2007, which is I think one of the best Eurovision years. I'm going to go for the winner, Molitva by Maria Serafovic, which I just thought was this incredibly powerful ballad, and again, really interestingly, obviously it had a real lesbian theme to it. You know, Maria Serafovic herself being a lesbian and having an entire staging that was done in the style of Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, but with women instead of men. But again, Serbia now cracking down on LGBT rights, you know, a very not quite autocratic, but certainly in the bent of Russia, Hungary, these countries that are kind of cracking down on LGBT identities, let alone rights. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And then to be on the other side of the coin, the runner-up of that year was, of course, Verka Serduchka from Ukraine, who had that absolutely iconic hit, which just, even now, 17 years on, is still an absolute earworm. And last, I'll end with more predictable things. I think you can't mention Eurovision greats without mentioning Waterloo in 1974. And then, of course, one that has special relevance for us being Celine Dion in 88 with Ne partez pas sans moi. So that's my 5. I think I probably stolen some of Leo's there.
Only one. Mine's a little bit more mainstream and conventional, but definitely Ne partez pas sans moi. Celine Dion won for Switzerland in Dublin. I don't know if you remember. Back in the days, they used to take them all out on tour, and she was brought to a bog and got to see how turf was cut.
That video of her on the bird on the train, trying to act excited.
It's a classic.
Then the other one's not a winner, but Gina G, who I just a little bit, which I still think is a great song, and it's still played these days. And the winner that never happened. You know, Satellite Lena, Germany.
Yes.
I'm a Lily Allen fan. It's very much a Lily Allen type vibe, and I thought that was.
I think Hera Bjork was robbed that year personally,
and this year as well with this.
I can't believe she didn't even qualify.
Yeah.
It's just.
Anyway, I think the last two, then I would go for Euphoria, which I can't believe Matt didn't pick. I still think that's a brilliant song. And lots of people who like dance music and, you know, like nightclubs and things actually don't know it's a Eurovision song, you know, which I think is fascinating. And then finally I go to a non-winner, Fuego, Cyprus, which I think should have won. That was a great song.
I still remember that summer where we were in Greece, I think it was, on holidays, and you could not get away from Fuego that year. You know, that was the song of the summer for a lot of Southern Europe, I think.
It's actually mad when you go even across Europe nowadays. Like, I was in Portugal over the summer, and the amount of Eurovision songs on the radio, it's something that we really lack in Ireland, and it's such a shame because, like you said, you're always hearing Fuego, you're always hearing all these other bangers that are. You know.
Well, it's literally a small number of people who get together and put on a Eurovision playlist somewhere, or some bar has a Eurovision night, and it's not mainstream enough. It's quite normal. You know, the Baltics along, you know, the Spain, Portugal, Greece, like the Mediterranean, all very normalised, whereas Ireland. I think maybe it's still seen as a little bit of a kind of a niche, quirky thing, when actually, well, I mean, our entry this year doesn't help that.
It works though.
Just great to be in the final. And
and top 10 as well.
Well, great to be proud of an entry as well. I mean, I remember the thing that was different about this Eurovision Brothers. I was so proud of our entry going in. I was like rooting for it. I was so excited when they got on stage, and the crowd went nuts. They absolutely
and
went
impeccable
nuts.
staging as well.
Like, it just shows you what you can do if you put a bit of thought into it.
Yeah, the creativity was unbelievable.
Yeah, and it kind of touches on what we're going to talk about next, and really the direction that Ireland goes, because you mentioned there that, you know, it's not really been great results recently and stuff.
And I think when you look at the song contest even, and the late kind of Song for Ireland type thing, if you looked at some of the other entries this year in particular, I thought they were shocking. I thought you couldn't put 2/3 of them on stage. They were just either had no kind of direction or imagination, were not in any way unique, or were just a rubbish version of the stuff that other European countries put up. You know, I think this thing that stands out has got a real creative vision and is different. And you know, Eurovision fans, they always want to see something new. They always want something different, something they haven't seen before. You know, and we were just putting up more of the same and very poor
I just
intentions.
think, though, the Late Late Show Studio 1 or Studio 2 isn't the place to do it. I don't think it does justice to a really good song, and then that's the images that go out for the first couple of weeks. So, you know, it'd be nice if it was staged maybe somewhere different, maybe the Helix or a different venue, where you could actually do a much more impressive stage show. And I remember back in the day there was a national song contest, and that's how we picked our winner. And you'd have a different song maybe from every county or something like that, and then the final would be in the Gaiety or in the Olympia or the Helix or the National Concert or whatever. And I think nothing against the Late Late Show, but the studio that they use is for a talk show. It's not. Good bands aren't going to be able to, or good singers and performers aren't going to be able to show what they can do in that space and in that format.
And like you said, it's the first image that a lot of Europe will be seeing as well.
And the staging in the Late Late Show, it's kind of the song with a little bit of costuming. There's no sort of effects. There's no kind of full staging. So you compare even our entry this year. Obviously, it was incredible, but the final staging on the day was amazing. That wasn't obviously what was presented on the Late Late Show.
Chalk and cheese when you look at it now.
And you compare it to the countries who are very successful, and the two countries that consistently score into the top 5 or top 10 are Sweden and Italy, and they have obviously Melodi Festival and the San Remo contest. They have a much bigger production right from the get-go. So the songs are being written and staged a year or 2 years in advance to come up and then perform, and they're waiting here to get a slot when they can get in. So I think that kind of enthusiasm, energy, but also putting a lot more work into the first iteration of the product rather than the final product, I think will make a big difference.
Absolutely. And just to touch on something that the Irish Times reported last year, that you had spoke with RTE about various things, but Eurovision did come up regarding funding. Is there anything you can tell us about that now and how they received that?
Well, I'm still a recovering politician, so at risk of misrepresentation, I wish to clarify at the outset that I would have met RTE once or twice a year, and top of the agenda would have been their own finances, some of the financial irregularities there, the issues around bogus self-employment. Eurovision was probably never on the agenda, or if it was, it wouldn't have been the first thing on the agenda, but it would have come up in conversation, certainly with executives and officials in RTE. And one thing I always said to them was, don't be afraid to win. If Ireland actually won this, just as would be the case with other big events, we wouldn't expect them to cut the news budget or the children's programs budget, that there would be a special allocation from the state to assist them to stage it, because it's such a huge event now compared to what it even would have been the last time we hosted it. And we'd have to show off the country well. So it was never given in writing, which means that it doesn't necessarily transfer to future administrations. But I really think if we did win, people would expect Ireland to show. Giving
a gay Taoiseach a free hand to fund, this massive barter account to fund the Eurovision would surely bankrupt us. So I'm sure they're a little bit nervy about that. But.
How do you think a government would handle hosting the Eurovision Song Contest? Obviously, it's it's RTE that are responsible, but obviously, like you said, the government will probably have to step in and help. Do you think we could do a good job?
I think so, and I think it'd be welcome. We host big sporting events. We host other big events too. So I definitely think you'd get Ireland on board and the Irish government on board. But one thing that I think is interesting, and I wonder how this would turn out. It's a tradition in Ireland that the President and the Taoiseach go to the big events that are happening. One thing I really noticed, from Liverpool, from Turin, from Malmö, the Prime Minister wasn't there. If there was a member of the royal family, whatever, they were not the monarch, and I kind of wonder why that is. And I would have thought in Ireland being Ireland, the government would want to be there, or the president might be there, and we would want to use it to showcase the country and put on a good show. And we all remember how Riverdance came out of Eurovision, and we'd be trying to top that again, I think.
I think in terms of showing off Ireland, I think Mill Street obviously was a great example of a slightly offbeat place to go for Eurovision. I'm thinking great transport links to Knock Basilica. I think using that as an arena, just to really go all in.
Our West of Ireland listeners are like, yes!
They're perking up now.
You can imagine them at Knock Airport suddenly seeing plane after plane of gaudily coloured fans.
Who are these people coming here?
And we were going to ask what role you think the contest plays in Irish identity and culture. You've kind of touched on it there. It is important, and certainly if we were to host, it would be important.
And also, something we're good at, something that people know us for, something we have a great tradition in. Obviously, I was surprised we've managed to make it to the Loreen concert last year, because we resent her so much for beating our 2 records, or equaling our 2 records. But
I just can't believe she played such a small venue.
I know. Should have been the Olympia.
Sold it out.
Yeah. I actually remember being at that and Leo saying, "Where are all the gay men?" It was all just
Which I didn't know. She's a whole other fan base.
Yeah,
so
it's
it
a
was.
mix.
I saw her at EP, and it was like you said, it was just young kids there and families. It was crazy to see. So.
Which, I mean, no more than we all get behind the rugby because we do well internationally, except at World Cups. We get behind the rowing, Kelly Harrington for boxing. When there's something that we're good at, we're proud of, we really want to kind of show up. And certainly in Ireland, whenever we've gone to Eurovision, if you carry an Irish flag, you get a lot of fans coming up and people shouting Johnny Logan at you.
And we are the island of saints, scholars, and singers. So, I do think our arts and culture are a big part of our identity. And I travel the world a lot. Have represented Ireland the world a lot, and in a huge number of countries people's first connection to Ireland is the fact that they're Irish American or Irish Australian or Canadian of Irish background. But when you get away from those English speaking countries, for most of those countries their first window into Ireland is our music or our dance or our literature. So we shouldn't underestimate the soft power that allows us to introduce Ireland to the world, in places like China and the Gulf, in India, where they wouldn't have that kind of migration connection that you'd have in English-speaking countries.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it touches on something that you mentioned there, obviously travelling the world, and as former Taoiseach, has it ever come up Eurovision in the most bizarre scenarios? Like you could be chilling with Angela Merkel and suddenly you talk about the German act from that year, or has it come up in weird ways for you?
It does come up. It does come up because it is the kind of thing that you can talk about. So if the football was on, if the Euros were on, that's what we might talk about. If it was the week or two in and around the Eurovision, it would definitely come up in conversation. And just to give you kind of two small examples, the person who was supposed to succeed Angela Merkel, Akaka was her name, but she had to resign the leadership. Didn't quite work out for her. One of her neighbours was Nicole, from Ambition Frieden. Yeah. So it's just kind of a weird thing to come up at a conference in Bavaria, talking to who was the person who was then the leader of the CDU, and then even at Irish government level, and I don't think I'm breaching any cabinet secrets by telling you this, but Shane Ross, when he was Transport Minister, was keen on the idea of a Terminal 3 in Dublin Airport.
Love it.
Love it. And I suggested I'd go along with it, but only if Linda Martin got to do the opening.
Cut the ribbon.
And about 5 people understood what I was talking, and I just got these bemused looks from about 10 others. But
they're the real people.
5 very important people.
Yes.
That's the thing.
Excellent. Speaking of Terminal 3 and great songs, we believe you have done some Eurovision karaoke before. What is the most iconic Eurovision karaoke song in your opinion?
The only Eurovision karaoke I've done, I think, is Hold Me Now, and it was in a bar in, was it Malmö? Yeah.
Malmö, yeah, that was whatever.
Which is a lot harder to sing than I thought. It's one of those songs that you
That's
think,
why I wasn't
about
focusing on the singing. I was focusing on the kind of body expression, getting down the knees, kind of giving it loads. So the enthusiasm was all on point. Everything else was
getting the J-Lo.
Yeah. I mean,
it is a harder song than I thought, and it's quite high at points as well, which, it's a fair play to Johnny Logan.
Yeah.
Well, on the kind of the theme of singing other people's songs, I think one of the iconic moments of Eurovision was at the 2019 Tel Aviv Eurovision, when several Eurovision participants in the past had to sing somebody else's song. And I think, I still watch that all the time, but I think when Eleni Ferreira sang Dancing Lascia Tumbai by Verka Serduchka. So if I had the balls, because I would have been in Malmö singing Dancing Lascia Tumbai if I thought I'd get away with it. But that might have caused even more of a controversy. I didn't have any tinfoil to wear, so
We'll get you some.
Good. And I love the caption that the Deputy Prime Minister of Luxembourg put on the post. He said, "Tonight in Malmö, 12 points for Ireland, but just not tonight. Tomorrow, 12 points for Luxembourg."
And of course, Xavier was delighted because it marked the return of Luxembourg to Eurovision.
First time
they hadn't been in a long time, and they were frequent winners in the early days.
5-time winners,
yeah.
So maybe sometime soon, Luxembourg.
Yeah.
And good for the smaller states too.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We're going to give you some fun quick fire questions to finish out our chat. So we'll alternate. I'll give you a quick kind of category. So I'll ask you something, and as quickly as you can, just answer. And then Conor will ask you the next one. Favourite Eurovision winner?
Celine Dion.
I was going to say, no, it can't be Loreen because we hate her now.
We've made an executive decision.
We just decided she's persona non grata. I'm going to go Linda Martin, just because her post Eurovision career has just been hilarious and iconic, and she's just a real treasure. And I think she's got an enduring relevance, particularly amongst gays and people who are fond of good TV.
She's a good pal of ours.
You odious little man. Iconic. So best host city in your opinions?
Liverpool.
Liverpool, but based on
3 cities.
limited experience.
End of 3, yeah.
Your favourite staging of a song?
I'm going to go with this year. I'm going to go with Maria Teresa, the Ukrainian entry.
Yes.
So I remember seeing that. I saw it at home on TV watching the semis, and I saw it in person at the studio, and the visuals of the woman dressed as a warrior climbing the mountain against the missiles raining down in the light of what was happening in Ukraine was absolutely. I actually literally have goosebumps now thinking about it. So it's just really, really impressive. I think a real testament to the kind of the spirit of the Ukrainian people. I think it really shone through.
Yeah, don't really know actually. To be honest, I could give you an
Maybe
answer.
Fuego.
That was great staging. Yeah, definitely. And around the kind of Xena one.
That was
actually
Ruslana.
Xena. Yeah, Ruslana.
Yes.
And I met Ruslana because she went on to become a member of parliament in Ukraine. Yes.
Maybe you could do it the other way around.
That was great.
If I don't
Go to Eurovision.
I don't remember the Greek entry this year, but if her dancers had taken their shirts off a little early in the performance, maybe I would have given that. But they left it way too late. Well, sorry, no, was it Cypriot? Wasn't it?
It was
Cyprus,
Cypriot. Yeah.
Whatever her name was.
Oh,
Liar.
Silly
Silly Capsis.
Yes, sorry.
Capsis,
Yes. An artist you'd love to see represent Ireland?
I'd love Tolly McKay to do it because she's a beautiful singer. Although probably too far advanced in her career to do it, but I think she would. I think you could write a song for her, and she would do it really well. But I think, like a lot of people, probably too far advanced in her career. So
I think Jazzy. I think she'd be great.
Really?
I think she'd really just bring the fun and the energy and just something kind of a little bit different and a little bit catchy. It always amazed me. She's an incredible performer. Her songs are incredibly catchy. Like, why wouldn't she be up on the stage kind of doing it internet? I mean, Måneskin had, obviously a very, very big career afterwards. I think maybe that would be what would crack her internationally and make her a little bit bigger, but I think she'd be great.
Do you think she'd do it?
No, not at all. She's way too cool. She's way too cool for that. So the government need to mandate her to go.
We'll be waiting.
Leo.
I'm not in the government, so
you've connections.
This includes Eurovision artists, concerts, and Eurovision contests themselves. The best event you've attended in relation to Eurovision?
I've been to the Euroclub parties afterwards.
Yeah.
So the one in Liverpool.
Yeah,
that was really good
Camp
fun.
Probably the same.
Turin was good too.
Yeah, anything that one of the performers shows up to. So
Yeah.
This year when we were in Malmö, obviously things were very different in terms of security and everything else. But Johan Capsis showed up to the Euroclub afterwards, so fair play to her, and that kind of really actually got, because the crowd was kind of starting to wane a little bit, and that kind of got it going again. So she didn't bring her dancers though, which is
shame. It's also, as well, just speaking of artists, so good to see so many artists coming to Ireland now. Like you said, like Lorene's coming back next March, with Nemo coming as well. So
they're both actually in March, I think, a few days apart. So actually, we're
Baby
tickets,
Lasagna as
tickets
well.
for
It's
both.
great to see.
Was Baby Lasagna coming?
April.
Next April, So
wow.
see you there. So next one is Marty Whelan or Graham Norton.
Terry Wogan.
Oh, wow!
I do miss him.
Yeah.
Really?
Oh yeah. There's just the dry kind of humor, like it wasn't. Other people can sometimes be a little bit mocking. He just had this really cool, dry sense of it. It's very funny. I really enjoyed it.
I think Marty's great, but I think Terry Wogan.
But I think as well that the
just
person you listen to
something
when you're
different.
growing up. So we listen to
That's
Terry
what you
Wogan.
remember.
So that's what kind of kickstarts things. What you'll always associate.
Who did the RT commentary before Marty though? That I can't
Pat
think.
Kenny did it.
Yeah.
It changed
a
hands.
lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
Marty did it
I
over
think they're
years.
both great, but it's Terry Wogan's the iconic one for me.
Interesting.
He got a bit sour towards the end.
Yeah,
Terry
he
Wogan,
kinda-
I felt.
Well, I think you felt that the United Kingdom was getting hard done by or whatever. So.
Which they were.
They
let's face it,
were they?
Yeah, but there's a context to it,
Yeah.
But we won't get into that.
They never got over sending Scooch that time.
Yeah, flying the
I
flag.
loved that. I'm not gonna lie.
because it's Camp Lou.
True. What, in your opinion, is the biggest Eurovision upset? So maybe somebody not
Upset.
qualifying or not winning when they should have.
I think there's a few Eurovisions that jump to mind when we think of a song that won being kind of meh and a song that came second or third being an absolute banger. I think the two standouts for me would be 2008 when Dima Bilan won with his really rubbish, forgettable song because there's some ice skater on it, and poor Annie Lorak with Shady Lady came second, which is I think the original Russian atrocity against Ukraine. And then in 2011 was it Ellen Nicky who won for Azerbaijan, which is just like they not in pitch,
Horrible,
boring, forgettable. Whereas you had people like Katie Wolf, who a favourite of mine, ballsed it up on the night, unfortunately, but a much better song.
I think 2020 being cancelled.
Yeah.
Because that was an upset, and they weren't able to put together an online version.
And Iceland had everything
Iceland,
wrapped up to it.
Iceland
Between the Eurovision film,
Yeah.
their great song.
Written in the stars.
Yeah.
And we'll never know. That kind of bothers me. We'll just never know.
And I'm kind of sorry they weren't allowed to re-enter the same songs.
Yeah. Strict rules.
What's more important, staging or vocals?
I think staging to get there and to impress on the night, but I think for after Eurovision, if you're looking for enduring sort of legacy of your song, it has to, because you're going to be listening to it when you're out for a run or when you're in the car or whatever. So it has to be the vocals, the only things that are coming through. So I think you can win based on really good staging, but you'll only actually endure if you've got really good vocals. I think usually on the night, I think the viewers generally do a very good job of picking a song that does both pretty well. I don't know,
I think they should be equally important, but I think vocals should be more important than maybe they are. And when you're present in the arena, you get a very different sense because so much of the staging is designed for TV, and you're not really seeing that. I think that's why sometimes people in the stadium have a different impression as to who should win and who shouldn't.
I mean, I remember seeing Loreen in
you couldn't see her. She's in
a box way over there.
Panini maker.
Whereas Cha 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 was a great stage show. When you're sitting in the big arena.
Do you think Cha 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 should have won?
I think so. Yeah. In the last couple now, I've gone with the. I for whatever reason, my choice was also the popular vote choice. So this time would have loved Croatia to win, but wasn't to be.
Interesting.
And finally, in your opinion, the most memorable moment, one of the first things you cast your mind to when you think of Eurovision?
I think it's got to be Riverdance. I just remember, it was just, I think that the crowd were stunned. There's nothing anybody had ever seen before, and just couldn't get over how you kept thinking that it was nearly over. And then just another line of dancers appeared, and then there became one bigger line of dancers. They just kept on going and going. I thought it was absolutely iconic. It was amazing, and it was great to have something in Eurovision that was so Irish. And yet so completely original and fresh, and kind of just it really sort of stood out as one of those. And I find the halftime moments can be great. It's a little more than I mentioned the Switch song from 2019, which I really really enjoyed as well. Or that you think of the great song between Måns Zelmerlöw and Petra Mead when they did the Love piece. So I think those kind of big kind of set piece moments can be amazing.
I'd go with Riverdance too, but to give you a second one. It was when they were trying to connect to Sarajevo. This is when Sarajevo was under siege during the Bosnia War, and they were trying to connect to Sarajevo to hear the votes. And I think initially they had difficulty connecting, and then they could, and that was, I think, a gesture. It felt like a real gesture of solidarity with a city at the time which was under siege. And it wasn't that long before that the Yugoslavia had actually won the Eurovision. Rock Me Baby. The Winter Olympics had been held in Sarajevo, and just within a few years, which just shows how much the world can change dramatically for the better and worse in the course of a few years. This was a country that was under siege, and we didn't even know if we'd be able to hear their votes.
And of course, it was heard in Ireland. It was 1903.
Well, thank you so much for stopping by and chatting to us. It is
been a pleasure.
An absolute honour to have the pair of you on it. Will we see you in Basel? Are you going to head over? Or
I don't know.
We're kind of making a semi-electric decision. We might just give it to sit it out this year.
Yeah.
I think the other thing we found that in Malmö this year was that the atmosphere was very iffy. I mean, it was so much more security. There's snipers on the roof.
Very
there's
different.
Protesters, and I think we have a few friends who'd be diehard Eurovision fans who've been going for decades nearly, and they were very much of the opinion that it really wasn't Eurovision. And I think if we're looking at a similar situation this year, I think a lot of people, not only ourselves, would be looking at maybe sitting it out and just waiting for things to kind of get back to normal, because the party atmosphere it's not the same.
It wasn't there at all.
And Eurovision is all about freedom, and it's all about partying, it's all about easy going. Nobody wants to make it, I mean, obviously it is political, but nobody wants to make that the main focus of the competition.
I think though as well, anything you go to every year, you appreciate a bit less. So maybe maybe a fellow
Right.
year isn't a bad idea.
Yeah.
That's it. If we send another Bambi Thugger and another incredible performer that have they've got a real following, have a real presence, I think you'd be kind of tempted to go see how they get on.
Let's wait and see.
Have to wait and
Submissions
see.
open now.
Yeah.
Well, again, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure, and we'll chat to you soon, hopefully in the future.
Great. Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Thank you.